At this point of the world's longest mountain range, 52 years ago, a plane crashed into a mountain. The surprising thing was that the plane disappeared immediately after the crash. This is the Andes mountain range of South America, 8,900 km long, where there is nothing but 15,000 feet high mountains, unbearable cold and silence. People had already forgotten about this incident, but about 2.5 months after this incident, exactly 72 days later, the authorities received a message from the missing plane. Hello friends, you are watching Fact Galaxy, where we bring you real and heart-touching stories. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Viewers, this was the Uruguay Air Force Flight 571, which has made a miracle in real life, and has written its name forever in history. On October 12, 1972, this flight takes off from Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay. There were rugby players on board who had to go from Montevideo to Santiago, the capital of Chile, to play a match. Along with the rugby players, there were a total of 40 passengers and 5 crew members on board. After takeoff, the plane had just landed in Argentina, but due to sudden weather conditions, they had to land in the city of Mendoza, Argentina. The captain made this decision because between Argentina and Chile, the world's highest Andes mountain range is standing as a wall. The high mountains here are already very dangerous, and passing over them in bad weather was not safe. The pilot's plan was to spend one night in Mendoza and then the next day, when the weather was fine, cross the Andes Mountains. But what did the pilot and all the passengers know that what trouble was going to befall them the next day? The next day, Friday, October 13th, Flight 571 took off from Mendoza. If you look at the map, there is only a distance of 180 km between Mendoza and its destination, Santiago. But in these 180 km, there are only 15,000 feet high peaks of the Andes. Therefore, the planned route of the flight was something like this, that the first plane will go south of Mendoza, gain its height, and then reach the Planchon Pass, turn towards the Andes, cross these dangerous mountains, and then turn back from Chile's city of Corrego and land directly at Santiago. Flight 571's pilot had completed about 50 flights on this route, so he had a lot of confidence in himself. As soon as he took off from Mendoza, the plane departed south according to the plan. While gaining the height of the plane, the pilot noticed that a thick layer of clouds had hidden the entire view below. Now, in this condition, the pilot contacted the control tower, which would look at the radar and tell the pilot its location through the radio. In addition to the control tower, the pilot can also estimate his location in another way. Keeping the last known location of the aircraft in mind, the pilot calculates the speed of the aircraft and estimates his current location. This method is called dead reckoning in the language of aviation. As soon as Flight 571 reached the Planchon Pass parallel, he took a right turn. Now he was passing over the Andes Mountains at an altitude of 18,000 feet, blue sky above and white clouds below. The pilot was completely dependent on the Santiago Air Traffic Control Tower. As soon as he reached near the Planchon Pass, Flight 571 disappeared from the radar of the control tower. This was normal because the radar signals were very weak due to the mountains. On this occasion, the co-pilot calculated his location through dead reckoning and radioed the Santiago control tower at 3.21 that we will reach the city of Chile above Corrego in a minute and ask permission to reduce our altitude. Now, normally it takes the plane 11 minutes to reach Corrego from Planchon Pass, but he covered this distance in just 3 minutes. The staff sitting in the control tower did not understand this, but because they also did not have Flight 571 showing on the radar, they gave permission to the aircraft to descend, but they had no idea that the location calculated by the co-pilot was wrong. The pilot thought he was above Corrego, but he was actually crossing Planchon Pass. A big disaster was waiting for Flight 571. As soon as he got permission from the control tower, the pilot turned right and started reducing the height of the aircraft. In the beginning, he had to face dangerous turbulence, but when he crossed the layer of white clouds, he saw a huge mountain in front of him. Yes, at this point, the pilot realized that he was still in Andes. The pilot tried his best to gain altitude again, but the nose of the plane had now turned towards the sky, but unfortunately this could have been done a little earlier. The tail of Flight 571 collided with the top of the mountain and separated from the aircraft. At this time, this mountain was completely covered with snow. Without a tail and wings, the fuselage of Flight 571 slid into the snow, came straight down, and stopped at this point. Due to the crash, 12 passengers died on the spot, especially those who were in the back of the aircraft. Miraculously, 33 passengers survived in the fuselage of the plane, but they were badly injured. Due to the separation of the tail, the rear part of the plane was open and it was very cold inside. They were stuck in the Andes at an altitude of 11,500 feet, where the temperature was minus 30 degrees Celsius. As soon as they came out, they could only see the snow-covered mountains. First of all, they buried their colleagues' bodies in the snow. There, the news of the plane crash alerted the Chilean authorities, but they didn't know that they had actually crashed in Argentina. Without wasting time, they started the search operation in which 4 airplanes took part. From morning to evening, while searching the suspected area, they did not see any plane and no wreck. This was a very difficult search operation because all the mountains below were reflecting light due to the snow. In this search operation, Uruguay and Argentina also took part, and now a total of 11 aircraft spend the whole day looking for Flight 571. Here on the crash site, rescue planes passed over the remaining passengers many times, but despite their countless signals, the rescue planes could not see them. Later, they got a lipstick from a luggage, which they used to write big Césares on the fuselage of the plane. They also made a cross on the snow from the luggage bag, but the rescue planes still could not see them. After a total of 8 days of search operation on 21 October 1972, all the passengers were declared dead and the search operation was completed. On the 11th day, the passengers on the crash site found a radio in the cockpit, which they tuned and heard the news that the search operation to find them was now closed. Where they were already in so much trouble, this news made them even more sad. The last hope of their survival was also over. In the first week, 5 more passengers lost their lives due to injuries. Now only 28 passengers were left on the crash site. They collected the luggage and the luggage bags of the plane and closed the fuselage of the plane so that it could be saved from the cold. They also cut the plastic visor of the cockpit and made glasses for themselves, which were saving themselves from the light reflected from the snow to some extent. The seat covers were used for heating and snowshoes were made from the cushion of the seat. By this time, they had 8 chocolate bars, 3 jam jars, some dry fruits, and countless bottles of water to eat. In the first week, they had a hard time dividing this food and eating it, but when all this was over, they started eating clothes and cotton, which made them sicker. In this part of Andes, they could not see anything for energy, and on top of that, it was not possible to get down from the ridge on which they had crashed, and nor was it possible to hike up. During this time, the condition of the passengers was that their body weight had decreased by 40%. Finally, when they did not understand anything, they started eating the body parts of their dead companions. Obviously, this decision was very difficult, but hunger, thirst, and weakness forced them to take this step. 17 days after the crash, on October 29th, an avalanche suddenly came at night and attacked the fuselage badly. The speed of the snowstorm was so fast that the entire fuselage was filled with ice. 9 survivors were killed in this incident. Whatever was left in the hands of the remaining 19 people, they removed the ice from it and made room for oxygen. As the days went by, the condition of the survivors was getting worse and worse. One by one, all the deaths were being seen and the survivors were waiting for their death. By December 12th, that is 60 days after the crash, 3 more survivors lost their lives. Now the remaining 16 people had only 2 options. Either they start counting their remaining days or they dare to hike this vertical cliff in the west. On December 12th, 1972, 3 rugby players, Pareto, Canessa, and Byzantine, decided to hike the western peak, hoping that the other side of the mountain would be the Green Valley, from where they might get some help. This was a very painful hike because they did not have professional gears and the temperature was minus 30 degrees Celsius. They wrapped warm clothes made of hand, made sleeping bags and ship seats and set out on a hike, After hiking for 3 days in a row, when they finally reached the top of the mountain, they saw that there were snow-covered mountains on the other side of the mountain, and there was no greenery here and no signs of life. Due to the shortage of food, one person went back to the crash site. Pareto and Canessa went downhill on the other side of the mountain in search of help. After trekking for the next 10 days and traveling 61 kilometers in bad condition, they finally reached a valley where there was greenery. There were animals and the river was flowing. First of all, they drank water from the river, and then they saw a person on a horse across the river. Due to the noise of the river, they were not able to convey their message to that person. Sitting on the horse, that local got an idea, and he wrapped a paper and pen in stone and threw it across the river. Pareto and Canessa wrote the whole story on that paper and threw it back. That person took this letter to the Chilean authorities on horseback. At first, they could not believe that even after 2.5 months, how can the survivors of the plane crash still be alive? But the authorities immediately rescued Pareto and Canessa and interviewed them in detail after their treatment. On December 22, 1972, that is 72 days after the crash, 3 helicopters reached the crash site on the trail of Pareto and Canessa. The pilot was also surprised to see this peak of the mountain, that how these 2 rugby players would have climbed this mountain without any gear and experience. Finally, all the survivors present in the fuselage were rescued, and their dead companions were buried in a large grave there. A memorial was made by placing some stones on that grave, which is still there in the same condition. This memorial still reminds us that if a person does not lose courage, he can overcome the biggest problem. Once again, I request you to subscribe to the channel and share the video with other people so that the reach of our channel increases and we get the motivation to make more such videos. See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care of yourself.